So for me, entrepreneurship and building companies, really, I come at it with a very simple outlook that I just love adventure. So
Yeah.
the reason I became an entrepreneur is I wanted to have adventure. And so actually transforming that to mindset is really the question of how do you keep an adventurous spirit in everything you do. I get invited to speak at a lot of events, and my favorite topic at the moment is to talk on the topic of legacy. How do you go as an entrepreneur, and how do you grow it into something where you have impact in the world and create a legacy? An inheritance is something you leave to people. A legacy is something you leave in people.
What does it take to build 20 companies in 5 countries and still feel like you're just getting started? In this episode, Cris Zimmerman reveals the side of entrepreneurship most people never see. A former lawyer turned global investor, Cris has quietly built a business empire spanning real estate, tech, energy, and healthcare, all while living between Frankfurt and the Isle of Yorker. But behind the polished resume is a story of reinvention, risk, and obsession with legacy. You'll hear how a deep fascination with the Medici family led him to rethink everything he knew about power, purpose, and long term success. Cris doesn't just talk strategy, he opens up about the decisions that kept him up at night, the businesses he let go, and why, after all the wins, he still believes success without significance is empty. This is the kind of conversation that doesn't just teach you how to grow a business, it challenges you to redefine why you're building one in the first place. Hey Cris, how are you today?
Yes, doing great, Mark. And I just thought that I'm going to fly you in whenever I need to be introduced somewhere formally because you're doing a great job, my friend.
Thank you very much. I do accept speaking gigs and do things, so I'm very happy to fly out to Frankfurt for you. Thank you so much for joining me today. As always, in all of my podcasts, the first question I always ask is, what does a business mindset mean to you?
Great question. And I don't think someone has asked me that kind of at the beginning of an interview. For me, mindset is everything, Mark. It's the thing that they don't teach you in school, but you very quickly learn as an entrepreneur that if you don't fix your mindset, and if you don't keep it up and grow healthy and growing and developing, you're going to be in deep weeds because there's just so much stuff coming at you that you don't know how to fight it if you don't have a strong mindset. Let me just say, the first thing that came to my mind when you asked the question is the term adventure. So for me, entrepreneurship and building companies, really, I come at it with a very simple outlook that I just love adventure. I grew up, my family background is from Africa. So I'm German, but I grew up spending a lot of time in Africa. My grandparents lived in South Africa. My mom was born there. And I spent my childhood flying small airplanes over the bush of Africa, visiting fun places, helping a lot with schools and hospitals and that kind of stuff. And that was my adventure life. And when I transitioned into business, then I thought, why would I be a boring business guy who just has a 9-to-5 job with, with a suit on? I come from Frankfurt, which is a banking city. So
Yeah.
the reason I became an entrepreneur is I wanted to have adventure. And so actually transforming that to mindset is really the question of how do you keep an adventurous spirit in everything you do?
That's a great answer. Very unique answer as well. Just delving into your time in Africa. So you grew up in, I think I read that you grew up in Frankfurt, but you've come from
My
a very
grandparents
varied,
lived in South Africa. So my mom,
right?
so basically the story is that my grandfather, so we're a German family, my grandfather after the war in Germany, so our family lost everything got bombed, destroyed. My grandfather saw an advertisement in the newspaper that there were jobs in the mines of South Africa. So he went and flew down to South Africa. Back then it took him a long time because there were no direct flights.
Right.
And then he started working in the mines. And so that's where he met my grandmother. She was South African. That's where he started a family. My mother was born in South Africa. Later on, my mother and the family moved back to Germany. So I was literally born in Frankfurt. But I spent my whole childhood going up and down between Germany and South Africa. So my summers, minimum, would always be in South Africa. And yeah, so this is our African background.
Amazing. Thank you for explaining that. And that idea of adventure, which led you into entrepreneurship. So just go a little bit further, a little bit deeper into the entrepreneurial journey. We'll go into some of the businesses and some of the things that you've done, but just expand on that idea of adventure and how that couples
So,
with
so I tell you
entrepreneurship.
how it got started, Mark. Yeah, when I turned 18 in Germany and finished high school, basically the day I finished high school, I boarded a plane to Nairobi, Kenya. And the reason is I wanted adventure. I had done my high school, and I'm like, finally, I'm out of school. Now I can go have some fun. And so my uncle from South Africa, he was actually running a whole bunch of building projects all over the continent of Africa. And I basically signed up for an internship. And I landed in Nairobi. He picked me up at the airport and he took me to this construction site, building site, of where 150 people were working on 11 townhouses and an office building. And he was in charge of the project. It was his project. And for 3 days, I followed him around and I was very curious. I wanted to learn, grow, and hear about it. Well, he saw in me my eagerness and passion to take responsibility. To make a long story short, after 3 days, he basically said, Cris, I'm going to hand you the whole project as project manager. And
Right.
I had no idea what this meant, but I thought this is awesome. Okay, I'm going to lead a project, which I had no idea what that would all entail. But for the next, I think 7 or 8 months, I lived in Nairobi and I literally ran this construction site, which meant I handled all the money. There was the ABN AMRO Bank. Every Friday I would have to do payroll. I would get a pile of cash, take it to the construction site, line up 150 workers and give everyone their week's pay. I bought all the building materials. I had a few engineers and architects work for me, and I messed up a lot of stuff. We had a riot on site. I had to call in the police. I had money stolen from me. I'd made some bad decisions on how to mix the cement, and there was an inspection, and it all went wrong. My uncle needed to fly in. So all this kind of stuff that normally you don't get exposed to. But this was my first start into project management. And here's how it turned into adventure. Every few weeks, my uncle would fly up from South Africa and we'd spend the weekend together. And he was my coach, he was my mentor, he helped me on leading a project. But we'd always go on some adventure. We'd go into the Masai Mara for some game drives. We went to Zanzibar, to the island. We went fishing on Lake Victoria. So for me, from the start of my entrepreneurial journey, it was like leading people, doing projects, and having fun on the weekends in Africa. So I just always felt that this is the way on how to do business.
How did you then go into becoming a German lawyer, though?
So after my Africa experience of these 8 months in Africa, I flew to Germany and I started studying law at Frankfurt University.
So if you were thinking about entrepreneurship and potentially real estate and property side, why did you then say I'm going to go back to Germany and train to be a lawyer?
Yeah, so I've never wanted to be a lawyer. So that was for me very clear. I just thought law is something good to have in your arsenal, and comes also part of our family story. So I grew up in a family of business. So my dad was running all kinds of businesses all over the world. And during my teenage years, there was actually a period where one of his companies got into trouble because there was a bad, in a sense, legal setup with the partnerships that he had formed. And I remember some of the conversations we had around the dinner table was like, man, we should have set it up differently, like structured the deal, the company, the business differently. And anyhow, when I decided what to study, I felt I don't want to be a lawyer. Never in my life do I want to sit there all day and just read papers and command a secretary or something. But I thought to cover your bases and to get the right setup, it actually helps. And so I started studying law. But let me tell you, I went as quick and as fast as you could ever go in law studies. So I'm probably the fastest person ever to graduate Frankfurt Law School, because I literally from day one, I went in there and I said, I want to get out of here as quick as possible. So I'm going to study for the state exam from day one. Normally, students study for a bunch of years. They go to the lectures. I didn't go to any lectures. I basically just bought the books and I started studying for the final exam. And so then I arrived at the final exam way ahead of anyone else, and took the exam, and I was out of there.
Wow. So let's move after you graduated as a lawyer. You then went into property. How were you able
No,
to get...
actually, already during that time. So, Mark, I studied, but a few things. First of all, I started a company, a catering business. I started renting a kitchen in Frankfurt, and I started a catering business. Yeah, and by accident, I just heard that there was a kitchen for rent, and it was very cheap. It was subsidized, and I started a catering business, hired some people, and opened up some shops at Frankfurt Airport. So actually, by the time I graduated from law school, I had 50 people employed. I had 50 people employed. I had 10 cars and no cash in my bank account. Okay, because the money was just coming in and out. It was a terrible business. It was just a lot of work and a lot of people. No money in my bank account at the end of the month. But anyhow, so this was one business. The other one was that, again, linked to my uncle from South Africa. So we had this positive experience of us doing projects together in Africa. And while I was studying law, my uncle basically called me up from South Africa and said, Cris, I'd like to invest some money in Germany in real estate. And I said, Uncle, let's do it together. I'm your guy. Let me do it. And so, to make a long story short, we set up a partnership, and I bought my first 25 apartments downtown Frankfurt while I was still studying. And yeah, so I got a head start also into real estate investing. Normally you start off, I don't know, with one apartment, and then buy a second one, and then you buy a house. I started off, my first investment was already 25 apartments downtown Frankfurt. And then that kind of gave me a head start. And now, to make a long story short, for the last 25 years, I've just bought these apartment complexes, commercial spaces, hotels, all kinds of stuff. You know.
Amazing. And so that's also globally as well. You do your property
on the real estate side, we've really built out our little empire there in and around Frankfurt. So Frankfurt is part of the Rhine-Main area of Germany. So it's Frankfurt, Mainz, Darmstadt, Wiesbaden, Offenbach, and a lot of small villages around that. And that's where we focused in on. And one of our models is that we buy small units of existing buildings. So I've never really done much construction, only renovation, but the multi-family deal where we buy small units. And when a tenant leaves, we basically fix them up, put in a new kitchen, and we put in furniture, and we rent them out on Airbnb and that kind of stuff. So I did this whole Airbnb thing way before there was Airbnb. So 25 years ago, there was no Airbnb, but we already did that. And because of that, I buy cash flow positive buildings, but then immediately we start investing into the buildings, and we ramp up the cash flow. So it's a great business model, yeah.
So with real estate, is it something that you're passionate about, or is it functional, that it serves a purpose and you've got your power team and various people to do is it something that you love, or is it something that it's very functional?
I've never taken a degree on real estate investing. I've never taken a course at university. As I say, I studied law, so I'm specialized in corporate and property law. So I immediately, how do you set up companies? I know how to do that. I know how to do taxes and that kind of stuff. But I love the deal side, actually, the transaction side. So I love finding great properties and doing inspections. So I've probably walked through 1,000 properties myself. That's what I would always do, is just do a lot of property site inspections. And then I love to put in offers, and I love the negotiation part of it. And on the one side, and the other side is I love to put together the finance, put the numbers together and get the deal done. The minute I close the deal, I basically hand it over to our team. And we run it as a family business. My wife is very involved. She's the head of our family office there in Germany. We've got a whole bunch of people employed by now who help on all the management stuff. But my speciality has always been getting the deal. So I love to do the buying. I love to do the negotiation, handle the high-level bank relationships and that kind of stuff.
Amazing. So let's move on to the Medici Global Ventures. My first question is, what's the fascination about the Medici and the Renaissance?
So this is basically my big hobby and my passion project, is that during the pandemic, 2020, I decided to not eat so many carbs because I don't want to grow fat during the pandemic. And number two, I decided to learn Italian. I've always wanted to learn Italian. Italy was always, we lived in Germany back then, and Italy was always our favorite holiday. Just drive down through the Alps, go to Italy and spend some time. And so I've always wanted to learn the language. So I started learning Italian. I took Italian lessons every day. During the pandemic, there were lots of teachers online who were willing to teach you. And so I started learning Italian. Through that, I became very interested in the culture and the history of Italy. And then we took a family vacation in the summer to Florence. And that's where really on another level, I just discovered the Medici family. Growing up in Germany, I've always heard about them. They are Italy's most famous, most prominent family. There are about 1,000 books written on the Medici family. There's a Netflix series or something on it. They're very prominent. They're the great sponsors of the arts. Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo.
So 1500s, 1600s, isn't it? Is that sort of time that they were at their height?
So basically for 300 years, the Medici family called the shots in Italy. They in Florence and Tuscany. But back then, Italy didn't exist, so it was many different states.
Wasn't it?
But basically, they for 300 years, in the 15th, 16th, and 17th century, they basically called the shots in Italy. And they intermarried with the House of Spain, they intermarried with the House of France. They had some popes, they worked themselves into the Catholic Church. They had this incredible business, the Medici Bank, which branched out all the way up to London, all the way up to your place. There was a Medici Bank branch. So just an incredible, it's a business family. And so we were on a family vacation and I just read on the family and I thought, man, this is so interesting. I want to learn more and I love history and love reading about this. And and to make a long story short, I just became so interested. I read 75 books on the Medici family. So I, in a sense, became an expert. But this was all my hobby. And then it was a couple of years ago, I was with a friend and down in the south of France, and I was telling him all the fun stuff I'm learning about art and architecture and philanthropy and investing. And he said, Cris, this is so interesting for entrepreneurs. This is so interesting for other business families. Why don't you put something together and write a book? And so I wrote a book on Cosimo de' Medici. It's called Get Your House in Order, Success Principles Based on the Life of Cosimo de' Medici. And it's a book written for business people, for entrepreneurs. Because here's what I discovered. There are about 1,000 books written on the Medici family, but they're all written by historians. And historians are great people. They know how to record the story. But the Medici family was actually a business family. They were the wealthiest family in the 15th century. So Cosimo de' Medici probably was the wealthiest person in the 15th century. So the billionaire family, if you want, of its time. Yeah. And so all the books written on them were written by historians. And I felt, I'm a business guy. I should perhaps just take my business look at the family. What can I distill as principles that are applicable for myself and for us? And so that's what I put together in a book. And then I just invited a whole bunch of business owners from around the world to meet me in Florence a couple of years ago. And out of that birthed a whole business community, entrepreneurs from around the world that we get together and we have a lot of fun. So it's my passion project. It's my hobby.
Right. But I want to explore the community that you've built there, because it seems that's an important aspect of what you do in this venture. So why did you create that community, and just tell me the makeup of it and the people that are interested and that come along to be part of that community?
Yes. I love that. So under our family foundation, Mark, we've set up a company in Singapore called Medici Global Ventures. And basically we've set it up as a way for us to host business owners in a community. So it's a membership-based organization. For me, as I said, it's under our family foundation. It's under, in my head, we've set it up as a business, but it's not to make money. It's really just to host the framework. And so here's basically how it got birthed. We were in Florence together. I was there with 65 families in November of 2023. And I handed everyone my book that I'd written. I'm not selling the book because I just give it away for free. So I handed everyone my book. And then for 3 days, we walked through the city. And basically, I explained on how the Medici family constructed the city. And with every palazzo, the churches, the cathedral, the museums, everything goes back to the family, the art. And so we had an incredible 3 days. And there were some incredible business families from all over the world that were with us. And basically afterwards, the idea was, hey, we want to stay connected. We want to be connected. We don't just, who needs another business conference? Who needs just another event where we just meet people once and we add 20 people to our phone book. We want to form a community. So basically we started hosting a business community. It's only for entrepreneurs, business owners, and investors. And so if you're on a paywall, you can't join the community. It's really for people who build out their own things. Because of my background, and we've got a bunch of affluent families who have some big stuff to manage, but we also have some true entrepreneurs who just really want to think through, how do you set up yourself, your family, and your legacy. So our claim is really to create a beautiful life for business owners and beautiful companies. And so this is where we started hosting events in Florence in Italy. So I go there on a regular basis in the fall. We do a Medici gathering. We do a conference on the island of Mallorca. We have chosen 10 cities around the world where we host Medici Days. So it's an incredible business community that's just developing. Yeah.
So how do you apply it? What's the criteria that you need apart from being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so and that's in a sense why probably it's not structured like a normal business. We don't have a development plan in the sense it really comes out of referrals and friendship. So I just invited a whole bunch of families that I've been doing business with and that I have relations with to join in, and then they start referring each other. We have a nice website, but we don't do any advertising, no marketing. It really just grows out of relationships. Now, I do quite a bit of speaking. I speak at business conferences. I'm an expert on business development, so we haven't talked about that yet. But next to real estate investing, that kind of stuff, I'm actually an expert on business development. I know how to help companies grow and scale and that kind of stuff. So I get invited to speak at a lot of events. And my favorite topic at the moment is to talk on the topic of legacy. How do you go as an entrepreneur, and how do you grow it into something where you have impact in the world and create a legacy? And through that speaking, basically, when I get in touch with people, they start talking with me, then it's an easy invite. I don't put on the sales hat in the sense, it just grows out of natural conversations. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to give you an insight. One of the 6 questions at the end is about legacy, so we'll keep that until later. But I just want to ask you about, when you've had investments across tech, energy, healthcare, how do you vet the founders and the teams before you start investing in them with your
Mark,
family office?
yeah, great question. As I told you, kind of real estate investing, which is a very specific asset class. That's where I'm actually the expert. So I know how to look at property deals. But beyond that, I need help as an investor. And actually, I tell this entrepreneurs all the time. Entrepreneurs are oftentimes terrible investors because they know how to grow their company, but to invest is like a totally different mindset and skill set. And so I knew when we had accumulated a bunch of stuff, assets and wealth, that if I want to branch out, I need to get some help. Yeah, I've hired some people on staff to help me on due diligence on stuff. By now, we do a bunch of investments that go way beyond. But I've got a whole bunch of ways on how we do that. But let me just tell you one. Is wherever we invest into other companies, maybe private equity or venture capital or some angel investing, we never ever want to be the lead investors. So on the property side, I'm happy to be the lead investor because that's where I know how to set it up. On the other side, I really want to follow some other people out of that industry who really know what's happening. So looking at tech deals, for example, I'm not a techie. So I'm not just going to listen to some guy pitch me on their latest AI tool that they've invented and I'm like clueless about it. I will co-invest if a friend of mine, a family that I'm related to, who comes out of tech, who understands it, when they say they go in, then we consider it. And then I've got a process on how we do the due diligence. And I've got some guys who just do all the spreadsheets and they go into the details and they look at the data room and that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's one of the principles.
And for businesses that you've exited from, that you've invested and exited, what does a successful exit look like for you?
To be honest, Mark, I'm in the accumulation phase. Even on the property, talk about companies in a second, but even on the property side, I don't like to sell. I'm a buyer and I'm a long-term investor. Okay, I'm not in anything for the quick fix. I like to secure a good deal, but then I want to stay with it. Okay, I know you can. There's a million ways on how to make money, both with companies, private equity, or with properties where you just go in and go out. I love to build it because we feel like, in a sense, you really only create a legacy if you build things over time. And that's where actually a lot of entrepreneurs, for me, have such a short-sighted vision. They're just going for the exit. And the dream is then they've got a lot of money and then they can, I don't know, live however they want to, not work again. And I think that's actually it's actually a terrible vision for your life. And in fact, I've been with a bunch of guys who've had a great exit, and basically afterwards they're a mess because they've lost their purpose, they lost their drive. Yeah. They're sitting on a bunch of cash, which they really don't know how to invest properly because they've always been building stuff. And then they do stupid things, okay? And believe me, I can tell you a lot about stupid things that people do. But we spend a lot of time here on the island of Mallorca as a family. And there are actually a lot of guys who own companies and they end up here on a Spanish island. And I'll tell you, lots of them are really without a lot of purpose. And after some time of playing golf or playing on your boat, basically it gets very boring. So the exit, in a sense, has never been my big goal. I know it's for a lot of tech entrepreneurs, VC, that's all they think of. Yeah. I come from the other side. I'm like, let's build something over a long period of time. Let's play the long game. At the end of my legacy talks when I speak, I ask people, what's your 500-year strategy? Okay? And everyone says they don't have one. I'm like, I know, because most business guys, they just think about their next exit. They just think about the next quarter. They just think perhaps they have a 5-year plan. But I'm much more in the long thinking. Exit is actually not very interesting to me.
Yeah, and it's the sort of buy till you die. So I've got some real estate properties that I rent out, and my ambition is not to sell that, is to pass on to my children. And let's touch on that legacy thing. So usually I ask the question at the end, what does legacy mean to you? Let's touch base because you've mentioned it a few times. What does legacy mean to you?
Great question. And I don't know whether I'm even qualified to answer that fully, even though I host conversations around it, because I think actually it's very multifaceted. Let me give you a quote. There was one of our Medici members was with us in Florence for the Medici gathering in last fall. And he's got an incredible story, business guy from the US. And we did an interview together, and he said the following. And it was also a quote that he had picked up somewhere, so it's not even original from him, but here's the quote. He said, an inheritance is something you leave to people. A legacy is something you leave in people.
Nice.
A lot of people a lot of business guys focus on, they want to leave an inheritance. They want to structure something nicely for their kids so that they're not poor and that they've got a company or got some properties or whatever. And that's where we get the lawyers involved and the tax guys to make it most efficient. And we spend a lot of time on that kind of stuff. That's an inheritance. And yes, you need to work that out. But a larger question is actually beyond the material, is the immaterial. What do you want to pass on that goes beyond just assets, values, philosophies, thoughts, ideas, concepts that you want to pass on? And this is where actually the Medici family for me is a great example. On the one side, there's a lot of stuff that they left. The art and architecture. That's why people like to go to Florence, Italy. The whole city was constructed by the family. Every palazzo you go to goes back to them. All the art so there's definitely the side of the tangible. The most important and most expensive art in the world today was all financed by the Medici family. It's just incredible what came out of them. But beyond that, I think why they've created a legacy is because they really instilled this down into the family, into the next generations, and they were building and playing a larger game. And so for me, that's the legacy question. So when I'm with other families and when I'm with other entrepreneurs, we really host the questions, what do you want to pass on here further? And let me give you another quote or question that I heard someone ask, which is, what do you want your grandchildren to tell their children about you? Okay, so it's an interesting question because normally we think about what do we want our children to tell their children, but takes it one step further. What do you want your grandchildren to tell their children about you? That's something you can spend some thinking time on, and how do you actually shape that?
So the theory is that I've heard, and I can't remember where I'm going to quote this from, but essentially you have three generations. You have the generation before. You obviously know the generation that you're in, and you know the generation that your children. So you know your grandparents, you know your parents, and then you know your grandchildren. Beyond that, most people won't be remembered. But how are you talking to people? How are you explaining to people how to make that legacy beyond those three
Yes,
generations?
great question. What you just said is also true about business. Most businesses don't make it beyond the third generation.
Right.
Because there's the building generation, then there's the one that starts stewarding it, and then the grandchildren spend it.
Yeah.
And so this is why most family businesses, after three generations, they are gone. And here's the interesting thing, Mark. The same was true about the Medici business. So the Medicis created a bank. Giovanni de' Medici is the father of Cosimo. He started the bank. Cosimo made it successful. But within three generations, that bank, which was an incredible cash flow positive enterprise, collapsed and went bankrupt, went bust. Total years, 92 years, the bank existed.
Right.
So actually, it's a typical family business, and then it's dead. Now, here's the interesting thing. Because the Medici family, during that time of business, positioned themselves beyond business in the other spheres of influence, that's why they have a legacy. So what did they do? They went from business to politics, to art, to architecture, and to religion. They strategically invested beyond business into the other spheres of influence. And this is why, even after the bank collapsed, they were still influencing society, culture, and making a big dent. And that's why we still, 600 years later, still talk about them now, because they did that. So one of my appeals to business guys is it's great to have a good business. You should be working on your business. You need to get some serious cash into your bank account in order to do some great things with it. But if you only do that, you're never going to create a legacy. I mean, there have been a lot of wealthy families in history. There have been a lot of wealthy families that we don't know anything about them because the money's all gone. It's all spent. It's all vanished. The business all don't exist. But if you position yourself broader, then you can actually start creating a legacy.
So what's the Zimmerman legacy going to be? What are we going to be talking about the Zimmerman family in 100, 200 years?
Yeah, Mark, I'm trying to figure this out. I don't know. This is for me a learning exercise here. This is why a couple of years ago we started setting this up on our family foundation. So a lot of investments we now do is on our family foundation. That's one of the things that we've pieced together, that it's not really anymore about just increasing our net worth. It's really stewarding things for the future. The Medici community, which, by the way, we've got a website called medicilegacy.com is our website. And so there you can see some information about it. And it's really a learning community. So it's not an investing community, it's a learning community where we come together to really share about personal development, relationship development, influence development, and business development amongst business owners and entrepreneurs. And I'm learning. And so I feel incredibly privileged because I get to listen to a lot of very smart business people. We get together, we spend time, we form friendships. We've got people from 25 different countries within our community already. And last year, 150 families signed up to be part of it. Business guys signed up. And so this is how it's developing. And I'm trying to figure this out for myself and for our family. So I'm not the expert on legacy.
How have you evolved as a leader?
How have I evolved?
Yeah. So how have you changed over the years as a leader when it comes to the real estate stuff, for the investment side?
Okay, I'll give it to you on a spectrum, okay? So if, simply put, if on one side you've got task-oriented, and on the other side you've got people-oriented, okay? I basically started way over here, which means I was 150% task oriented when I got started in business. Okay. No one ever needed to tell me that you need to have goals for your life or your business. I grew up with, I wanted to grow and achieve and do things. I'm a hustler by nature. I want to build. And so I'm very focused on tasks and getting goals achieved. And yeah, that's how I started. And then you just make a lot of mistakes as you're trying to grow stuff with people, because you're too task oriented and you're not treating people as nicely as you should, and you're not developing leadership qualities and stuff. And so that's where I really embarked on this whole journey of learning more about leadership development, relationship development. And really now people would say that I'm a very relational person. People love talking with me. My people on my staff and team partners that we work with, they would say that I've learned and grown a lot in that area, because at the beginning of my career, I would say I was not as good of a leader. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. What would you say your risk appetite is?
That's a good question. Because I come out of real estate investing, I can tell you honestly, I've never ever lost a euro on any of the investments. Like zero.
Is that
Well,
because
because
of
you
your
can't
risk
lose
appetite
money
is too?
if you know how to do it properly. If you learn how to invest in real estate, it's impossible to lose money. Now, let me just say, I know a lot of guys who lost money in real estate, okay, but not the way I approach it as a real estate investor, okay? If you start investing into cash flow positive multifamily properties in good locations, and you've got your numbers right from the beginning, and in a stable market like Germany, which is very conservative, it's almost impossible to lose money. Okay, and I can tell you, after I've never lost a euro on any of the real estate. Now there are lots of ways on how you can lose money in real estate, but I have not, because I've learned how to structure it, how to set it up, and how to invest it. And that's why, if you ask about my risk appetite, I don't want to lose money. So the first principle, I don't know, who's it, Warren Buffett, the first principle of investing, he says, don't lose money. So I don't like losing money. Now on the other side, I've bought some stocks over the years where I've lost terribly. In fact, on my phone, I actually have one of the stocks that I bought years ago, because someone gave me a suggestion to invest in that. So I bought it, and I think it's 60% in minus. And I keep it, not because it's a great investment, but just to remind myself, Cris, don't buy shit you don't know about. So, because you want to spend. So I would say I'm not a very risk averse. I don't like to lose money. I would like to make money, and I know how to make money, but in save stuff. Now, we've by now branched out and have done some other investments, but still my brain, and that's perhaps why I'm also have a law brain. Lawyers, you really only need when things go bad, and you set everything up so that you know what's happening when it goes bad. That's why you draw up contracts. And so I think I'm wired towards that side. So I'm not a very risky kind of person. As I said, I'm a builder. I like to build and grow and make it stable and make it good.
What's the plan for the next 2 to 5 years, the next stage of your life?
So at the moment, on the investing side, we invest. So I look over a lot of deals and opportunities. And so I'm always interested to see what others do. I'm very opportunistic in that sense. Because I'm hosting a business community, I also get access to incredible off-market stuff that is just very interesting. So that's one side that I want to grow and develop that further. And then on the Medici community, I can't even tell you how much fun this is, because I'm just meeting some of the most interesting business people from around the world. So last week I was in Romania. I spoke at a business conference in Romania. I met some incredible business guys in the city of Brasov. The week before, I spoke to 1,000 tech entrepreneurs in Miami on global investing. A few days before, I was in Italy, in Florence. I spoke at a private members club to some business guys. So I'm traveling around quite a bit and meeting a lot of interesting people. Yeah. So grow that network. So I think one of the strategies that every entrepreneur needs to think through is, how do you build your network strategically? By network, I don't just mean more contacts on your iPhone, but really friends. People who know you and people you can call up. And we've got very interesting times geopolitically. And so I think one of the strategies actually to make sure that you survive is if you build strong relationships with people in other industries and other countries and build out a net. This is what I learned from the Medici family. In the 15th century, Cosimo de' Medici, he already built his banking branches all over Europe. Before there was internet, airplanes, automobiles, he strategically set up his bank branches all over Europe. And I think he did that very much on purpose to have this reach. And so that's where I encourage business guys all the time. If you have your local market, whatever that is, how do you set up yourself and your family and perhaps some of your investments on another scale?
Amazing. Look, we're coming to the end of the interview. I ask the same 6 questions to all of my guests. Quick fire questions. They don't need a quick fire answer. The first question is, what's the best decision that you've made?
Best is business-wise or just in life?
Up to you. It's your questions. You answer it however you like.
Well, I'm a person of faith. My grandparents later on were missionaries in Africa. And so one of the best decisions I ever made was to start following Jesus, Christian. And as a teenager, there was a youth group that invited me to hang out with them. And I remember we were hiking up in the mountains in the south of France. And someone invited me as we were sitting around the campfire to just pray to God. And I started doing that, and I felt, man, this is opening up a whole new world. So I became a Christian, and I pray.
Amazing. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
There are a million things run through my mind. I'm an avid reader, Mark. I'm an endless learner, and I actually, probably that's what I would put out there, specifically if your audience is business people. Is to endlessly keep growing and developing yourself. It's terrible to stop growing once you finish with formal education, whether it's high school, university, or whatever. Stay an endless learner. And that's why I love podcasts. That's why I'm happy to be on your podcast here and communicate, because I just think we all should be growing and developing further. So the best advice I probably ever received is, Cris, stay a ferocious learner for the rest of your life.
Amazing. Who's helped you most in your career?
My wife.
Why?
We've been in business together. My wife is my biggest supporter. We've had ups and downs within our marriage, difficult times where we wanted to end it all and run away. But we've stuck it through together. And she's my biggest supporter. I rely on her every day, and I love her to pieces. Yeah.
That's amazing. Tell me about a regret that you have.
Yeah, lots of regrets. Most of them around people and relationships where I've messed things up at the beginning. I told you on my leadership journey, I transitioned from being someone who's very task-oriented really to more people-oriented. And so at the beginning of my career, I burned people because I was too quick, I was too harsh, I was too demanding, and I made some mistakes that I regret.
Thank you. That's very honest of you. I appreciate it. Share a time when you wanted to give up and what pulled you through to keep going.
Yeah, in 2020, we had a family crisis during the pandemic. The world was on crisis, but we also, as a family, we were stuck at home. We couldn't travel. There was some business stuff that kind of fell to pieces. And my wife and I, we had a marriage crisis. We also, after 20 years of being married, we also reevaluated, do we want to continue? And yeah, it was very difficult for us. And we really went through a deep valley. And the long story short is my wife, she also had some physical health issues. She came out of the clinic and basically we knew we need to change something. And so a longer story short, but within 3 days, we moved to the island of Mallorca. We just left everything. Everyone got a suitcase and we just left the island and we went down to Spain to do it on a sabbatical to spend some more time together. And that was really a time for us to recalibrate our lives. But there was a lot of points where a lot of tears and just frustration, which you go through. And yeah, and I'm proud of us sticking it through, but it felt terrible.
Thank you for your honesty and vulnerability there. I do appreciate it. Next question. Tell me something that most people don't know about you.
Don't know about me. Oh, that people don't know. See, the problem is I communicate a lot. So and I'm very quite, I don't believe in big secrets. So I'm very, you said now a few times, thank you for your vulnerability. I don't know how not to share also about the stuff that is difficult. So even the stuff that probably people hide away. I'm very open on that because I've learned a long time ago that if you want to impress people, you just talk about your successes. But if you really want to have an impact with people, you need to let them know about the failures and the stuff that didn't go well. I'm very open also on the struggles. I've got a whole talk where I just take people through the crisis that I've had. Okay, and I've had 4 major crises in my life, and I can happy to tell you if you want to have a depressing moment, I can tell you about mine and take people through it. So I really don't believe much in having things hidden in the closet. In fact, I tell this entrepreneurs all the time. I wrote a book called Get Your House in Order. I really believe in us doing this kind of clean up job on a regular basis. This is why I love the Renaissance period. Renaissance was the rebirth of society. So I think we all need to go on a regular basis through our own cleanup and our own renaissance. That's where also my faith background comes in. I just believe also in spiritual renovation and just cleaning up, forgiving people where you've done wrong or they've done wrong to you. I think you just need to keep cleaning things up. So I don't have lots of secrets, Mark, that people don't know about me.
Okay. The next question is about legacy. What does legacy mean to you? We've already covered that, but just to expand on that, where does legacy fit into your life? It sounds like it's a major thought process for you, but how are you thinking about legacy and how are you thinking about the Zimmerman name being like the Medici?
Mark, to be honest, I really don't care much about my own name being famous. I actually absolutely don't. What I care about is what do I do with my kids and with my family? And how do we support each other? And what can I pass on to them? I mentioned I've got 3 boys. They are now 19, 17, and 15. And I'm having conversations with them every week. We travel together. My oldest son started university in California a couple months ago. So he's now out of the house. But we're having a lot of conversations on what is important to us, what's our values, how can we support each other. I know a lot of families that just mess things up greatly on the family side. And I've messed things up around the house as well. So don't get me wrong. But I'm really trying to be a good dad. I'm trying to be a good dad. I'm trying to be a good husband. And I really have this vision for us doing things together. So I know a lot of entrepreneurs, they basically just do their business and they come home at night and their family has no clue what they do. I have a different vision. I want to do things with the family. I work with my brother very closely together. He's actually the CEO of Medici Global Ventures. He's got a PhD in organizational strategic leadership. He's very smart. He's very strategic. He actually likes to lead all the people that we have on staff. So I don't do any of that. So we really have this family perspective. But it's not about our family name. It's really more about what cool things can we do together and support each other with. That's my legacy thinking here.
Amazing. And lastly, where can people find you if they want to find out more about you and your business?
Yeah, MediciLegacy.com is the website that is hosting the business community. There's a free link to my book, so you can download my book. There's also a button if you're interested. Mark, it sounds like you have created some great businesses and have some great business exposure. I'm happy to tell you more about the community, what we do there. You can click on the link. I actually just hired a person to help people more interested because up to this point, it was really just me inviting some of my friends. And now it's taking a little bit form and shape beyond. But we've also put up a coaching program for self-managing businesses. So one of the things that people ask me all the time when I speak at conferences, because how in the world do you manage all this stuff? How do you run all these companies? How do you have all these employees? And this is where basically we've put together a framework on just how people can set up their companies as self-managing businesses so that you're free to either, spend more time with the family or go spend time at the beach or create another company. And so there are ways on how you can set up your business where it's not consuming you, but you're actually more free. Now, the reality with a lot of business guys is that we're not so free anymore because our business eats us up. And so one of my great joys now is to actually help entrepreneurs and business guys on how to create self-managing business. Anyhow, MediciLegacy.com, you can find some more information there. We also host a podcast where we deliver some stuff, but happy to be connected.
Thank you. Thank you, Cris. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you very much for your time.
Mark, thank you so much. Great questions, and thanks for your interest.
Cheers.